Hello and welcome. In today's video I'm going to talk about the illegitimate children of Heinrich Himmler. Now Himmler had 3 children. The first one was Gudrun Himmler. She seems to have been a pretty nasty person because she was trying to revive the memory of her father, claiming that everything said about him was either exaggerated or at times even that he was innocent of what he was what we all know that he did. She died in 2018, and her mother was Margarita Himmler, the wife of Heinrich Himmler. Now, Margarita Himmler was 7 years older than her husband, and it had been her money that had financed him. Now, she was born near Bromberg, as it was then, Bydgoszcz as it is today, and was indeed after the First World War. And the parents had sufficient money to be able to afford to set her up in business in Berlin, a nursing home. Now, she sold her stake in the business, and then, when she got married, went to live with Heinrich Himmler in near Munich, or just outside of Munich. Now, the families of the two didn't get on really very well at all. In fact, the Himmler's family, Catholics, refused to even go to his wedding, to a marriage to a Protestant. Margarita Himmler had been married before, and she was a very bossy woman. She was constantly complaining, and this comes out in her diary. So there's constant complaints, how much she suffers for other people, how good she is, and how bad everyone else is who's around her. There is somebody who wrote, and I can't remember who it was now, unfortunately, but it said there was no doubt about who wore the trousers at home. And so it would seem that Heinrich Himmler had a pretty miserable home life, being constantly under pressure from his wife. Now, at the beginning, when they first got married, they were poor, didn't have any cash at all, really, of any consequence, just what she brought to it. He wasn't earning anything of any consequence whatsoever. He was running around doing his Nazi party stuff. But after the Nazis came to power, because of the corruption within the system, Himmler suddenly came into a massive amount of cash. And anyway, and he was also very, very important in the Nazi system. And so in the mid-1930s, we don't quite know when, but Hedwig Potthast came to work for him. And at some stage, they began to have a relationship. Now, and she was completely different to Margarita Himmler. She had a much easier going character. She wasn't complaining, and she doesn't appear to have nagged him. Of course, we don't know these things, but this is just from trying to read around what other people said after the war. So now, Margarita Himmler knew about this. And most people seem to think that this happened around 1940, 1941. But in my opinion, it happened much earlier. And I'm going to give the evidence for this. Is that at Christmas 1937, Margarita Himmler had given Hedwig Potthast doilies and sweets for Christmas. But the following year, she wasn't on the Christmas presents list. That means to say she must have found out in 1938. How did she know of her existence? Well, it's clear that Himmler brought work home with him. And so therefore you would have had all the other people, not just Hedwig, but all the other people associated with him, the other SS people who would have come into his house, and they would have discussed whatever they discussed there and then, of course, without the presence of Margarita Himmler. She would have been in the house, but she wouldn't have sat down at the discussions. Now, once she found out, and you can imagine how this must have been for her, she had financed him. He was in the position he was in then because of her cash. But he then ran off with his secretary, who was 19 years younger than she was. Hedwig Potthast could have been the daughter of Margarita Himmler. Now, think about how that must have been for her. And given the fact that she was one of these people who blames other people for all her ills, how she would have been inside with all this, with this knowledge. And she did write in her diary how unhappy she was that her husband no longer came home. We know he did come home from time to time. For example, just before the invasion of the Soviet Union and the worst stage of the criminal activities that he got up to, he gave himself, I think it was a 36-hour pass. And we even got a photograph of Gudrun, him and Margarita out in the fields actually picking flowers. Anyway, there's a photograph of it. And you can see the photograph in the longer video I did on Margarita Himmler. Now, despite everything, at the end of the war, Himmler commits suicide, which I think he did, and those are things suggesting he was murdered or whatever. And then Margarita suddenly finds herself, from being super important with a really big house with servants who never did their jobs properly, according to her. Then so she finds herself on the run. She's picked up in northern Italy, in Bolzano, and she's placed under arrest, but she's released after a while because they can't really charge her because she hasn't done anything. And after this, she tried to contact Hedwig Potthast. But Hedwig Potthast, in the circumstances probably understandably, rebuffed these attempts. She wanted to have nothing to do with it. Now, Himmler had 2 children with Hedwig Potthast. There was a girl who was called Nanette-Dorothea, and there was a boy who was called Helge. And to tell you the rest of the story, I need to go back in time a little bit to June 1938. And Joachim Peiper then became a adjutant to Himmler. Joachim Peiper was the later to be sentenced to death for his part in the massacre of Malmedy, which took place 17th of December 1944. I did a video from there, and I showed the path of his unit when they actually came across the American unit, who they actually then murdered. Now, Peiper mightn't have been there at the time, but he was responsible, and certainly was responsible for other crimes as well. So he had a lot. He absolutely deserved the death penalty, but he was released. Anyway, coming off the subject a bit. So I suspect that in the summer of 38, he met Hedwig Potthast, and he also met Sigurd Hinrichsen, whom he married on the 26th of June 1939 in an SS ceremony, and Himmler was the guest of honour at this wedding. Now, Sigurd Peiper, as she was then, she went to live in Rottach-Eggen in Upper Bavaria in 1940, and this was near Himmler's residence, or second residence, and there she was able to maintain contact on friendly terms with Hedwig Potthast. Why not? They both knew each other from the old days before they got married, and then they could... and they can chat and do whatever they do. Now, so at the end of the war, Himmler's dead, Peiper's in prison, and times were really tough for them. So having had all of this wealth, all of the servants and everything, people were frightened of them. Suddenly, they are in this poverty situation where everything is either being destroyed or looted. And in 1953, Potthast took the 2 children to near Baden-Baden, where she had a bungalow with her friend Sigurd Peiper. So they shared the bungalow together. And now Joachim Peiper was released from prison in 1956. So we had all these American soldiers murdered, and he gets a death sentence, and then he gets commuted, and then he gets released. And that, incidentally, is more responsibility not of the Germans, but of the Americans. Hedwig Potthast got married again. She met someone else, and the children took the surname of her husband. And thing was this: Helge, the son, however, was he had a medical condition. He required constant care, and so he had to live with his mother. Now, Helge Potthast died in 1994, and there was a lawyer who for them, and the lawyer was contacted by a journalist wanting to write a human interest story, and he asked if he could see Hedwig Potthast's estate. The lawyer actually refused, and he said that, so this was the lawyer effectively for Helge, the son now, and this was refused with a request not to be contacted again. Now, Helge died on the 2nd of August 2005, and he was 63 years old at the time. Now, Nanette-Dorothea had also used the name of the stepfather, which understandable in the circumstances. She went on to study medicine, and she became a doctor in northern Germany, although she also died very young on the 13th of May 2000. Of course, the children are in no way responsible. Indeed, because of their age, they wouldn't have remembered their father at all. Maybe some distant, sort of blurry memories that we all have from a young age, which don't really make much sense. Neither of the children had their own children. Now, if you want to know more about Himmler, I suggest you have a look at the books, a couple of books actually. One called The Himmler Family, and another one called Himmler Privat, both by Himmler's great niece, Katrin. And now Katrin Himmler openly talks about her great uncle. You've got some videos on YouTube, you can find her on there, and she utterly openly about it, and she's got lots of information about the background of the family. In fact, for this video, I was going to pull out the book and say, yeah, you can get it from here, but since the moving from last place to this place, I couldn't remember where the book was. But anyway, that's what life is. That's what life is like when you live in a motorhome and then suddenly find yourself in a flat temporarily as well. So I hope you found this interesting. I've got a very long, it's about an hour in total, a video on the life of Margarita Himmler, the wife of the Reichsführer-SS. I'll give you a link to that below, and there's lots of information obviously not about Margarita but also around the family itself. I've also done a video on Hedwig Potthast. Now, Potthast herself may have been used by the Americans as an agent after the Second World War, which is possibly where she got the money to be able to live from after the Second World War. But that's coming a bit off the point here. So if you're interested, I upload every Tuesday and every Friday at 2000 hours my time. I live in Poland and in Germany. And on Tuesdays and Fridays, above all, I do longer videos, such as lengths like this. And so if you're interested in real history, then you'll probably research-based history, not AI slop, then you'll probably want to subscribe. I also offer membership of this channel. Membership costs £5, €6, $6 on all sorts of other currencies in other countries. And that'll give you access to currently more than 800 videos of my own. Now, I have a problem with YouTube. My videos are taken down. They're censored for absolutely no reason at all by YouTube, or some false claim that it's promoting hate or something nonsense like that. At the same time that YouTube actively promotes AI slop. The reason it does this, in my opinion, is probably because a lot of this AI slop is produced by Google's own tools, such as Gemini, and so I can't compete with being buried under a pile of slop, whereas something like this takes time to write and research and do. Maybe less so than here because I'm actually speaking to the camera, but in many videos you can see what the places look like today, and to actually go somewhere, and particularly to go to an archive, it all costs money. And I mean, I just can't. You ask, do me a video on Hitler's dog, and then you've got one in 5 minutes, and it's all been done by Germany. It's all incorrect, but so what? I mean, it'll do for slop, and then if you can produce 20 of them in a day, then great. So anyway, that's the problem I have, and if you, that's why I've got to do a membership. So if you take the membership out, then that would be helping me. So anyway, thanks very much, and all the best. Bye for now.